So this is a prototype. We'll see how it works. But what will help is if you come forward, which is great, because then I won't feel like you're my grad students who sit in the very back of the room for some reason, who like race to sit in the back of the room. I've never understood that because I was the front of the room person, always. So I won't spend too much time on this slide. This is me. I'll talk more about me in a second. It's less interesting than you would think. But hello. Hi to everybody. It's really nice to have you guys here and to be a part of this effort. I'm incredibly inspired by everything I've heard so far. The energy this morning was like the best thing ever. And so I came in today really, really excited to be a part of this. So I'm Jennifer Lowe, also known as J-Lo. It is, the damage that my marriage brought. And at IDEO, I'm known as J-Lo. And if you are curious about what I do or curious about anything after this, you are welcome to email me at jlo@ideo.com. So now we've gotten that out of the way. But I am a futurist, which is a weird job. And I'm a futurist-in-residence at IDEO. I lead our futuring practice. And IDEO is a fun place to do futuring because we've been designing the future for about I'm giving us a little extra here, almost 50 years. But futuring is a really interesting thing to utilize. And so often I get asked why futuring. So I do a lot of talks. I teach in a lot of places. I teach at UC Berkeley. I teach at McMaster. I teach for Aspen Institute and work at IDEO. And this is the question I'm asked most often. The second question is, what is the ROI? And I never have a good answer for that one. But I have a really good answer for this one. So if you think back to 2015, anybody know what Obama was signing in this picture? Yes. No, sorry, that was 2010. I just used it yesterday at another workshop. Anybody know? It was education-based. It was the Every Student Succeeds Act, which was, if I'm not incorrect, the replacement for No Child Left Behind, perhaps? All right. So that was 2015. And also in 2015, Instagram was created. And it was really cute. It was a place you just put pictures, right, to send to your friends. It had no influencers, no advertising, no weird algorithms, right? It was just this lovely little community-based thing. Now think about 2020. How radically different was 2015 to 2020? So significant, right? 2020 is, we talk about it all the time, is a lost year. For a lot of people, they have like so much angst around that they actually kind of put it out of their head. I know because I was working in healthcare at the time, so I was going into work every day still. I know that you as educators were going into work every day still, but it was a pretty rough year. So 2015, pretty interesting. 2020, totally different. 2025. Yeah. All right, exactly. How about the first 4 months of 2026? Like, I didn't have any of that on my bingo card. I don't know about you guys. So how much change have we witnessed just from 2010 to 2026? It's so significant. We talk all the time about, in futuring, about us sitting in a pot like a frog, right, with the heat being turned up and we're not really recognizing what's going on around us. We have witnessed so much change. This is why futuring is so essential, because how much more will we experience in 5, 10, 20 years into the future? The rate of change is so fast. Having a sense of being able to look forward becomes really critical. So the important thing to understand when you talk to a futurist, and we'll tell you all the same thing if we're worth our mettle, we know what we're talking about, and we'll always say futuring isn't about predictions, right? Futuring is about readiness. So no one can actually give you a prediction. It's impossible because there are always multiple plausible futures. So that's the thing that kind of makes your head explode a little when you think about it. But readiness is what we're trying to get to. So futurists try to help you get ready. And in particular, they're trying to help you with two things. The easiest way to think about it is offense and defense, right? Offense is getting somewhere before somebody else. All right, and that can look like a lot of different things depending on what field you're in or what industry. Defense is not getting hit with something you weren't expecting, or if you get hit with something you weren't expecting, having the skill set, right, to adapt. Exactly, right. So 2020 was the year we all found out how adaptable we are. Like I said, I was in healthcare. I can remember conversations that were shocking to me in healthcare, right? People who would say things like, I can remember saying, we need to get more nurses. We could have a situation like New York. I was in Northern California, and someone say, we don't hire new grad nurses. And I was like, I don't think that's really a criteria we need to worry about right now. Right? And I'm sure in education you felt the same things, right? So the people who do well in the future are those who can adapt, who have flexibility, who think in terms of readiness, all right? So I wanted to give you something real to walk away with today instead of talking to you about the future, which I do all the time. And so instead I'm going to teach you a tool, and I'm going to teach you rapid fire. So you're going to do a bunch of work in the table. So if you are one of those people that's sitting by yourself at a table, you're going to want to join other people. All right, here is like my last thing I'm leaving you with, because I'm at IDEO, so I'm a true believer in human-centeredness. And in all honesty, if I say anything that sticks with you today, it's that we need to build human futures. So much of the conversation around futuring right now is about the future of technology. And if we don't build human futures, there won't be human-filled futures to build. We must center on humans in the future. Technology is a tool, maybe a partner. It's something we will utilize, but we must design for the future of humans if we want to have a future. So we're going to start working on that today. When we build human futures in education, it becomes really interesting, because if we're not just asking what's the technology going to do, but we're asking about humans in that future, then a whole new set of questions open up. Right? So we're asking questions like, when and how will we learn? Right? Questions that are being talked about all the time now. Does it happen intermittently with work? Does it happen intermittently, right, during a long stretch of life? What will inspire the people that we serve? What will bring them and us joy, right? Because we do need to design for joy in these systems. How will our home, our family, our communities be different? What will we do for fun? How will we maintain wellness, physical and mental? Right? In our schools, in our communities. How will working lives change? What will we do with our leisure time? And then we can ask, what emerging tools will we be using? Because that's an important question too. I'm not anti-tech. I just think we need to put the humans in the center first. All right. So what you have in front of you is a set of handouts. Hopefully you have pens. If you don't, put your hand up. We have some extra pens. I know usually educators travel with a pen, so I hope you have one. All right. When I say, I gotta lose these.
Cool.
I'm sorry. Ooh, all right. If you have an extra and you can share with a friend, please do so. I have some in my bag if you need. And we'll get some pens. They're on their way.
Damn it.
It is steamy up here. Okay. So I'm going to introduce you to a tool that's a pretty interesting tool. It's both futures and strategy mixed together. So it's a really nice tool. I'm not teaching you a sort of out there woo-woo futuring tool. I'm teaching you something that you can bring back to your organization and use to frame conversations, to frame working sessions in a way that's really powerful. All right, one thing you need to understand about futuring is that futuring is made most powerful when it's done in context of the past and the present, as well as what we want to see in the future. You need all three together. There are things that come from our past that are truly powerful, that set us up for who we will be in the future or what our organizations will be in the future. There is definitely a lot of forces and important elements of today's world that are starting to shape how we do the future. And then we have those aspirations and dreams about the future, as well as signals of the future, and we pull them all together. The tool we use for this is called the Futures Triangle. And it's a strategic futuring tool that looks across three specific dimensions. So just what I said, the weight of the past, the push of the present, and the pull of the future. And it's the tension and the interaction between these three that give us a sense of what could be in the future that's really powerful. So before I start you on this, I'm just going to tell you, we're going to have to work as a team here. And when I say, okay, guys, let's keep going, you're going to have to come with me or else we'll never get through the tool today, all right? Because you guys are going to have lots of exciting conversation at your table. So I'll let you know when you're done, and then we'll start the next section. Works for everybody? All righty, thank you. So let's start with the weight of the past. And you always do it in this order. So I'm going to teach this to you today almost like train the trainer, so you can walk out and use it. Always start with the weight of the past. And be careful about something. The weight of the past has a really kind of a funny element to it, which is like it can become a really powerful bitch session. And that brings a lot of energy in the room. So make sure that you keep that in check, all right? It's important to do, but it's also not always in service of the total picture. So give some space to that and then let it go. Make sense? So the weight of the past involves the history of an organization, everything that it carries with it when it's trying to make change. And there are positive elements in the weight of the past, and there are negative elements in the weight of the past. And those negative elements are the things that cause barriers to change or inertia when you try to make change, right? So those can be old ways of thinking, old models, old structures, old legacies, systems, right? And so you've built those and you've paid for them and you think, oh, we can't change those now. We already did this, right? It's like the number one thing that keeps you from rethinking or reimagining what you're trying to do, and you just start making little changes, little incremental stuff. Somebody this morning was talking about that. I can't remember, he was one of the CEOs that spoke this morning. I thought his statements were really profound. They went right along with this, right? Which is the idea that there's all this stuff that we carry with us. So, as I said, it can involve so many things. You need to think through what are those physical and digital assets, cultural beliefs and behaviors, systemic constraints, community connections, both good and bad, right? Policy and legal decisions that are holding back change. But there's also a great amount of positivity with this. For each one of those, you may have something that's quite foundational for the future, right? Maybe those community connections are the thing that will pull you to the new way of doing something. And that's incredibly powerful, right? So key past leadership, important legacies, you need both when you think about this. So here are your instructions. For 2 minutes, you're gonna do a heads down brainstorm. That means mouth closed, writing with your pen, thinking, right? And I want you to think about the weight of the past of your organization. It's in your handout to be able to take notes at. And I want you, as you're doing this, as soon as that 2 minutes is coming to the end, and I'll give you a 30-second heads up, think about the one you would want to share at your table, all right? Then you're gonna have 5 minutes at the table to talk really quickly around. The reason I do this instead of just having you tell me something or maybe talking to 3 of you is that you may learn something from the table that you didn't think about from your own organization. So really put your analysis hat on right now and we'll get started, all right? So first 2 minutes, heads down. What is the weight of the past in your organization, your community, maybe even for you, that's keeping you from moving forward easily, all right? Make sense? All right, your 2 minutes starts now. If you need help, raise your hand, I'll come over. "30-second warning. Make sure you pick something you want to discuss with your table." Okay, you have 5 minutes as a table to talk through. Easiest way to do it is go around the circle, all right? What is the thing that you want to bring up with your table about the barrier in your organization that's holding you back from change? All right, 5 minutes starting now.
Have you engaged foundation funding?
I want to trade.
It's up on the try to. You have about 1 minute left. Thirty seconds. Okay. How did the first conversation go? Did you have fodder for conversation? Okay. Way to the past can be a really, really interesting exercise. And I would recommend if you go back to your org and do this, that you try and bring as many different people into the conversation as you can. Because my way to the past in an organization, if you and I work together, is probably quite different from yours. And recognizing and understanding those elements can take a while, right? It's pretty nuanced. Yes. Ooh, that was a great question. So the question was, so that the camera can hear, how do you think about way to the past when you're in a startup? The first thing is I'd want to understand the legacy. So I've done quite a bit of this actually with startups. And what startups have is they have the flavor of the people who founded them. It's what they care about. It's what they're passionate about, enough to pull away from a regular job and try to do something that's actually really hard. So shockingly enough, way to the past for a startup is really powerful. It has a lot to do with that. It also has a lot to do with how many things they came up against on the way to getting to that place. So I would recognize all of that, as well as whatever you've already established in the community. And also, to some degree, the difficult journey you may have had in getting people on board with you, to kind of understand what that environment looked like as you did it. How many of you are founders? Like, good for you. It's a really hard thing to be. And futuring for a founder tastes and feels slightly different from an established organization. So great question. And I'll try to remember to bring in that element as we're talking. It's about half of the room. So, and by the way, amazing, like cool building people. I love that. All right, let's talk about the next one. So the push of the present is actually everything that's happening in today's world, and it slides forward a little bit in time. So depending on who you are as an organization, I'll say it was kind of like the last few months, right now, and like anything in your true strategic timeline, not the one that you tell people you have, the like 3 years, but the one you actually do, which is like 6 to 12 months, right? So all of that kind of fits in your present. And it refers to something that you may have heard of in the world of futuring. It refers to things like drivers and megatrends, these huge forces that exist in the world around you today that you simply can't ignore, right? So if you're an educator, which I am as well, like you cannot ignore AI. It just simply isn't something you can ignore anymore. It's in your face, whether you like it or not. You're going to have a strategy. There are all different kinds of feelings and strategies about it, right? I teach at Berkeley. Berkeley sat back for, anybody teach at Berkeley? They sat back a little bit and kind of felt out where AI might go. And so with my grad students, I have assignments where it's okay to use AI and like I encourage it. So they start to use it effectively, and assignments where I'm like, if you use AI, I'm gonna know it, and it's really dumb because I'm asking you to tell me what you think about what you just read or how you feel about something we've talked about, right? So don't hand me an AI response. By the way, if your response is like, this is crap, I will accept that and grade it if that's how you feel, right? Just don't hand me slop instead, right? So we have a kind of dual strategy in my classroom, but I know like that's a force you can't ignore right now. You can't ignore certain things related to workforce, right? You can't ignore certain things related to economy right now, nationalism, you name it, right? So all these elements are things that exist in our world on a really big scale. And the reason it's important to think about them is they affect how we make decision making today. And the decisions we make today affect what happens in our future. So the kinds of things that we see in the present, it's kind of hard to get your arms around, right? So we use actually a framework that's pretty commonly known called STEEP or STEEPLE. Have you seen it before? Yes, maybe a little bit? All right, so social, technical, economic, environmental, and then political or legal, right? So some people will call it STEEPLE. And what we generally do when I work with clients or when I work with different organizations is I'll say, let's go through each one of these and figure out what are those forces that are really impacting us right now. It may be that in your organization, environmental is not really impacting you that much, but economy is really impacting your students, your teachers, whatever the case may be. Technical may be a huge thing right now. If you're teaching in K-12, social is a huge thing right now, but maybe political legal isn't touching you as much currently. So what I want you to do is, again, think about your organization and this time use the STEEP model to kind of organize your thoughts. So the instructions, same thing. We'll do 2 minutes, heads down, individual brainstorm. Pick one that you want to share with the group, and then 5 minutes where we go around the table. If you have questions, definitely raise your hand. I'll wander around. It's not the easiest thing in this room, but I will squeeze around and try to get to you, okay? So 2 minutes start now for heads down. I'll give you the 30-second heads up as well. This is your 30-second warning. Okay, you can start sharing around the table. You have 5 minutes. You have about 1 more minute. Okay, I heard a slight lull in the conversation, so I'm going to jump and interrupt. How was that one? Harder, easier than the first one? Harder? Easier. Okay, good. Yeah, it's a little bit more straightforward, right? It has a lot to do with what you're experiencing today. Sorry, I just realized I had the mic really close to my mouth. Oh, you really have heard me. Okay. Great. All right, now we're going to go to the hard part. All right, so you've done the way to the past, and everybody kind of gets what the way to the past does for you? Okay. You understand the push of the present. Everybody gets that one too? All right, and we could go and do this tomorrow with our teams? Sure, you could, because you have the information in front of you. All right, so now we're going to do the pull of the future. And the pull of the future is actually super, super interesting. Thought I was going to say hard, but I'll say it is hard, but it's interesting. Because the pull of the future pulls from two elements, right? So it pulls from the images and the stories of the future that include sort of our intentions and our dreams and the things that we want to see happen for our organizations. And that's called the preferred future. And I'm going to take 1 second to give a little commercial about the preferred future. This is why I'm an optimistic futurist. We have agency to create the future that we want to see and make it happen. And the most important thing we can do, which I don't get to teach you today because there isn't enough time, is tell stories of the future that show that preferred future and bring people along for the ride with us, right? And that's the power of futuring. We can actually help them imagine themselves in that future. We can build artifacts of that future so they feel it, understand it, and then want to get behind it and work towards it with you. That's the critical thing we're going for here. So you have some of that already in your organizations. If you didn't, you would not be at the summit, right? So you guys are already a step ahead, right? You believe you can make change, yes? This is why you're here. So this first part is the stuff that already exists within you and your organization, the stuff that you want to see happen. However, that's not the whole picture. All right, so remember, I told you, you have to think about the way to the past and the push of the present. That's there too. But now you have to think about signals of the future that exist in today's world, because it is those aspirations and goals that you have and the truth of the signals of where we think the future is going that you kind of have to mix together to create an alchemy that gets you to that preferred future. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do here. And that ends up being a kind of interesting thing because you have to understand what signals of the future are. And that's, that's the lifeblood of a futurist. So this is what I do every day. I collect about 100 to 150 signals a week. I think right now I have something like 25,000 pictures on my phone. So at some point it's just simply going to blow up or catch on fire. But what I do all day, all the time, is just capture signals of the future. I, by the way, have gotten several of them by overhearing stuff you guys talked about in the last 2-3 hours. But signals of the future are small, edgy glimpses of the future that we find in today's world, all right? They're different than trends. Trends are actually things people are already making decisions about, already changing their behavior around. That's how they became a trend, right? So if somebody does something crazy in a corner of the world and a bunch of other people start doing it too, that's now a trend. The first time it came up, that was when it was a signal, right? Make sense? So I'll give you a really weird example because it's kind of funny. There was a weird signal about a year ago called fridge-scaping. Does anybody know what fridge-scaping is? Okay. So it's not the thing where you make your fridge look like the Kardashians' fridge, where it's like pretty. It's actually the fact that you take the interior of your fridge and create a story around it. And in this case, a woman made hers public, and it was a Bridgerton-themed refrigerator on the inside, which is really interesting for a futurist because it brings up a whole bunch of questions about, have we just run out of things to personalize? Or like talk about, or is this the new thing, right? But what was interesting about that is other people started doing it. So at the day that it came forward, it ended up in my algorithm and I found it. Why? Because I have to be in horrible places like TikTok for my job. And when it came across my screen, I took a screenshot of it because I was like, I don't know what this is, but I know it's a signal. And within a couple of weeks, a bunch of other people started decorating their refrigerators. That's when it became a trend. It, however, quickly died out after that because it was kind of odd, right? So that's the difference between a signal and a trend. So a signal is something that's on the edge that gives us a sense of what the future could be if that thing became real, if it gained momentum, right? If it scaled. And so not every weird thing is a signal. I had other futurists say, I don't think the fridge-scaping thing is a signal. And I was like, I think you're wrong. Actually, I think it's a signal. I think if it went somewhere, it would be a really interesting statement on how much people want to open their homes to be, I don't know, an example of who they are inside, right? Yes. I can. Let me see if he's in the room. He's not in the room. I had a really interesting conversation with someone who works in the upper left part of the country. And he and I were talking about unique and interesting approaches um, to mixing workforce and high school education in unique and different ways. And it was really interesting to me because I've been looking at the other end of that. I've been looking at what's going to change about college, what's going to change about grad school, what's going to change about the workforce. And he was looking at it from what do we do to help middle schoolers who are like, I don't want a job, I don't want to go to college, get into a place that feels like a passion for them, that feels like something that will keep them going, right? And will fund their life and will give them maybe generational wealth at some point, right? So it was a very interesting conversation, one I'd never had before. Is it truly a signal? I don't know. Maybe everybody knows about this and it just was me that didn't know. So that's the other important thing to know about signals. It's a signal to you, which doesn't necessarily mean it's a signal to somebody else. So I have 20-year-old and 23-year-old daughters, and they serve as reverse mentors for me sometimes, because I'll be like, I found this really cool thing, and they're like, yeah, that's been around for years, right? Not a signal. So you should never future alone. So when you do this next part, make sure that you're really spreading the love, you're bringing other people in with you, and you're asking them to signal with you, okay? Make sense? All right, I'm gonna keep going. Thank you, good question. So signals are a really important part of the picture. We wanna make sure that we combine those signals of the future with the things that we think should happen and could happen for our organizations. And the pull of the future can involve a lot of things. Just like I said, external signals. It could be about new technology and adopting of that technology, new thinking, new models, new perspectives around workforce, students, teachers, what they should be doing, transformative collaborations, transformative partnerships. That same conversation I had, that guy was signaling all over the place for me. He was talking about really unique collaborations. Rachel, we have to talk about this because it's really interesting with the city that his school district is in and how they're kind of driving some change in the city, but from the school district, I was like, this is so exciting, right? As I love Future of Cities. So this is the really cool, uplifting part, but don't forget about the preferred future. So it's not just what's cool, what's new, what's pulling us, but what do we want to pull us? And how do we center the humans that we care for in that future? So a little bit harder than it sounds, all right? So instructions, heads down, 2 minutes. You know these instructions now by heart. And then you'll have 5 minutes to talk around the table. I'll give you a 30-minute heads up when, you just got a terrible picture of me. A 30-second heads up when you need to get your ideas ready. Thirty-second warning. You should be talking in your groups now. I forgot to tell you. One more minute, one more minute. All right, if you guys can get to a good stopping spot. I know. I need more time too. I should have begged for 2 hours. This stuff is actually so much better done in a half day workshop or a day workshop where you can really spend time on it. And I'm so sorry you only get a little taste of it. But my hope for you is that you walk away with something you can actually go back and discuss or go back and use in your org. And I will tell you again, I don't mind if you email me. So if you have questions about it, you don't know what to do with it, you were confused when you heard it because I taught it so fast, just email me, jlo@IDEO, it's easy. All right, or you can look for me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find there too. All right, I wanna teach you one more technique. I know it's like I'm kind of adding something extra in here, but I think it's really important. This last technique is called backcasting. And the reason why I'm teaching it is because futuring, especially when we do preferred futures, is only worth its weight if it's tangible, if it's something you can actually act on today. All right. Otherwise, it just becomes like innovation theater, right? So just like a kind of a fun time. And sometimes we do these for that purpose. I do lots of like leadership offsites where we just want people to think differently, and it works really great for that. But you all need to get change done, right? So I want to tell you a way in which you can do that. So once you've done the futures triangle with your group or with your team or with your parents or your community or whoever you're doing it with, when you decide what that preferred future looks like, then you can go about backcasting in order to get to it. And I'm going to tell you now that in your worksheet, I put it in the wrong order. Because I did your worksheet when I was really tired. And so I want you to look at the order that I use here instead, because backcasting is exactly what it sounds like. You start with the preferred future and you cast backward through time to figure out what to do next. So whatever preferred future you put in the right-hand box, let's say, if you're doing it on a piece of paper or on a whiteboard, and you determine what those elements of your preferred future are, you need to walk backwards through time. So if that preferred future has a 10-year timeline, then you need to think about your strategic moves around 5 to 8 years, right? And your tactical steps from now until 3 to 5 years. So that's how you work through it. If your preferred future is that, someone give me a preferred future. I'll see if I can do it on the fly. Name a preferred future for your educational organization.
That black boys are no longer the problem.
Beautiful. All right, love that. Preferred future, black boys no longer the problem. What's the time frame you want to do it in?
Yes.
All right, we're going to put it in future. So is 10 years good?
10 years.
10 years is good. Let's help, the whole group can help me with this one. In 5 years, what do you think needs to change in 5 to 10 years that would make that a possibility? What would have to change in systems? What is gone?
Achievement gap.
Achievement gap is gone. Okay, so that's one of the goals. What else? Policing has changed. If we're changing policing, what kinds of things would we have to change? How they're trained, right? How they're incentivized, right? How they interact with the community. So that'll take us some time. So we need to list those too. All right, let's walk backwards from the one about how they interact with the community. Let's do policing and how they act with the community. What would you do starting today?
I'm reading a great book. It's called 10 to 25, and it's how to motivate, the kids from this, or young adults from this age. And so basically, it talks about if a police officer starts with transparency, then they will have a good community reaction because the person will not be like, "What are you trying to get at? Was there a crime committed? Am I the was there a crime committed? What is going on? Why are you talking to me? But when you start with transparency and say, I am here as a police officer because I want to know the community that I'm working in better. Can you tell me about yourself and about what you like about your community? Then you will get longer answers and you will develop true community partnership.
Okay, that's great. That transparency maybe in 3 years. Okay, so what would it take before that to make that transparency happen? Who would have to agree? Trust would have to occur. You'd have to get a relationship with the police department, right? Maybe it's a community-based thing. Maybe we start with a small prototype in a particular community, right? Do you kind of see where it goes? When you first say Black boys are no longer the problem, it feels like, all right, where do I start? But you actually can start. We have agency to change that. Those are all organizations we can talk with. There are people in local government we can work with. We can get the stakeholders at a table. We can change the rules. We can change the laws. We can change training. We can change education. We can do all that stuff. When you put it 10 years out, it feels hard to achieve. When you walk it backwards, you can see where the seeds are, right? And I can tell you that this works because I've been doing this work for 15 years. I've been a futurist and like active working futurist, right? For about 15 years. And I have seen several big preferred futures actually occur. They will change, they will morph. Sometimes that moves around. But here's the thing about future that's important to understand. Remember at the very beginning, I told you it's about readiness. It's not about prediction. So if it changes, if it morphs, if something happens, if the stakeholders change, if someone doesn't come to the table and you have to go for someone else, that's okay. You still have that preferred future out there. You can still point at it. You can still make moves towards it. All right? That process of working backwards through time to understand what you can start doing today and how you can get other people to do it is called backcasting. And maybe stakeholder engagement. All right? Because you kind of can't avoid that part. Remember, don't future alone. That's a whole part of it. Okay. So I want to do, I'm so sorry, I'm like making you guys stand up and run when I didn't tell you to. Adaptability is the name of the game. So I want to do some QA and reflections because I think this is really important. I'd like you to do it within your table and then we'll talk about it in the main room for a second, all right? So these are the 3 questions I have. What felt exciting about this method? What felt uncomfortable or unexpected, and what's one new thing that you learned that you will commit to trying, okay? At your table, 2 minutes, and then I'm gonna ask people to talk about it, and then you're done. So you guys did a really good job. All right, so 2 minutes. I know, I'm so sorry, didn't like give you guys the heads up on the mic. That was one of those moments where I was like, oh, let's do it together. And then I didn't think about the ramifications. It's probably just me too, because I'm working. I will walk around with mics after this. If yes, okay. Okay, perfect. We actually ended up on time. I'm shocked. Yay! I'm going to give you an extra minute.
Articulating a preferred future is a way to lead a team that's way very powerful. I was actually coaching someone to a marriage situation, and I was like, okay, if you were to give this marriage score like 7 out of 10, what does a 7 actually feel like? And he was like writing it out, and then I was like, okay, now you can like take this to your partner and like make sure that's their vision also. Like I think the vision just helps people know what's the next step.
30 seconds. Get in your last comments. All right, I'm so sorry. I'm going to interrupt you guys. We only have 5 minutes left. So, like, shockingly, we made it through the curriculum. Hopefully it wasn't too fast. I know each time I interrupted you guys, I could tell I was pulling you from important conversations. So the first question was, what felt exciting? Did people find these exciting? Is this an interesting new tool? All right, I agree. I mean, obviously, but I'm super passionate about futuring, and I also think it's not supposed to be somebody sitting on a hill somewhere thinking big thoughts. It's exactly this. I used to say I'm a blue-collar futurist, and what I meant by that is I'm a working futurist, right? Like, I understand I don't just hand somebody an idea of the future and then walk away. We actually have to work on it together to make it happen. It's not an easy road. It's a difficult journey. What felt uncomfortable? Anything? The signals. Yeah, so I'm going to make you feel better about signals right now. I'm going to tell you the truth. I've been doing this 15 years. I'm actually pretty good at it. And I'm really good at signaling. I'm kind of obsessive about it. It's sort of a problem. But I would say 80% of the signals I pick up are not signals. So if that makes you feel any better, someone with this much practice, 15 years of it, about 20% of the time I have a good hit, all right? And fridgescaping is not my best example. It's just my funniest example, and one that always seems to get the crowd. Yes, it is one of the hardest things. And also, like, give yourself grace. Not only is it hard, it's also okay if you don't get it right. Because if you're not picking up a signal, what are you picking up? A trend. And trends also tell an important story. So remember, when I kind of sort of talked to you about this, but I had to kind of cut this part of the curriculum because of timing. But futuring has 3 elements that are really important. Understanding the drivers. That was the STEEP model you guys did. And then understanding trends, which tells us things about behavior and choice and how people think and how they might act. And then signals, what could be coming. Those 3 things together are what create futures, not just signals. So if you're picking up a lot of trends, that's okay. You're picking up one leg of the stool. What's really fun is to get better at signals, so at some point, you are picking up a signal. Because if you're picking it up, it's something somebody else maybe hasn't picked up. And it's novel and interesting, and you can maybe follow it down its path and be truly innovative. Be truly reimagining whatever the state is that you're trying to work on, okay? And that's really the key, right? And then we build preferred futures and we make them happen, right? Because we make them tangible and we work backwards. What's one thing that you learned that you could commit to trying? Anybody? Who's gonna try doing the futures triangle with a group? Yes, please. I would love to see you guys do it. Make sure when you get to that great place that you talk about it, that you try backcasting. If you get into trouble, call me, all right? I'll help you through it. Anything else you're gonna try new? Is anybody gonna try signaling? Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I'll tell you, there's lots and lots of resources out there if you're curious about it, okay? So you can signal, you can Google signals of the future, or weak signals is another way you talk about it, and you can get a lot of content back if you're curious and you kind of caught the bug today. Any other questions? We have 3 minutes, and you have me for 3 minutes, and then I'll also hang around for a bit.
When and how in your life did you figure out that you were super passionate about the future?
Oh, great question. The origin story. I got bit by a spider. No. I was the former managing director for innovation and strategy at Kaiser Permanente, and for people who know me for more than 55 minutes in a ballroom, I am a magpie. I like shiny objects. My attention goes to the next thing. I'm your typical ADD person who didn't know they were ADD till they were like in their 50s. And so by the way, futuring is extremely powerful for the ADD brain, right? Because I'm constantly feeding my brain something new. Yeah, so you'll like it. In the white jacket, you should be a futurist. So I brought in a speaker at Kaiser because I wanted our leaders, I was responsible for 250 leaders, and I wanted them to think differently about healthcare because I felt like we were just doing little fixes all the time, Sounds like another industry I can think of. And I brought in this man named Bob Johansson, and he's a really, really famous futurist. And he started talking not just about futures the way I had read about, like signals, trends, and drivers, but he started talking about what it meant to be a leader using futuring. And he's got some really phenomenal works out there. You can read stuff of his. He's pretty famous. He was with Institute for the Future. And I literally sat with my mouth wide open listening to him, and I realized this is the stuff I want to practice. And I was already doing human-centered design, and I recognized there were all these synergies between the two. So I went to Bob and I said, give me a PhD in this. And he gave me everything he could think of, because there really isn't one. And I read everything I could get my hands on. I practiced as much as I could. And I convinced the leadership of Kaiser Permanente to let me put it into practice at KP. And I just got stopped. So thank you so much. I will stand outside this door because I want to allow our incredible team to reset the room. And if anybody needs to talk to me, I'll stand outside the door in just a few minutes. All right. Thank you so much for spending your time with me.